Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Blind Spot. So in this episode, I'm just going to talk about it right off the bat. We have the return of Rich.com, played by the always talented Enos Esmer, and I'm just super glad to have him back just already in this season because I really, really, really love his character. It's just... For one, it's just because Enos will always be Oz from the listener to me. Every time I see him in every role, it's just because because it seems like, I don't know whether that's just a little bit of his personality seeping through the characters, but the personality he has as Oz, he always kind of transfers that over to a little bit each of the characters he plays. So I'm kind of thinking maybe that's just a little bit of him, just kind of in every character. So maybe that's what it is. Just love Rich, just adding he adds that kind of layer of comedy to the episode. It's like, it's going to be a fun episode. Turned out to be one too. It's just every time he pops up, things are just very interesting. It seemed a lot more crazy serious the first time you meet him, but the second time he pops up again, it's like, yo, he's just weird and quirky. I mean, he was kind of the first time too, but it was just kind of more like scary, weird, and quirky. Like, it's like, oh, he's liable to kind of be a little crazy and end up shooting you or something, because he's just like, it's like, oh, you're FBI. Like, he seemed like a lot more serious character, but it seemed like it kind of toned it down. I mean, it made him seem a little less serious, but I think that's to kind of counteract just how much of a dangerous opponent he is. Just like how he can easily mislead you into thinking he's an idiot and that things are going this way when actually they're going this way. I love the fact that the first time he pops up, he's like, oh yeah, I'm hacking the FBI, shut down all your stuff, I can delete every file. So I want you to hit these particular coordinates with a bomb. And it's like, if you don't, you have until I finish binging Stranger Things, which I was like, what? The moment he said that. And then also he's talking about, no spoilers. And he's talking about, I'm on episode 7. I can't believe they killed Barb. She was so lovable. I was like, well, first of all, Dick, you just talked about not spoiling Stranger Things and you just dropped a big spoiler like that. Screw you. I mean, granted, even when I was watching the show, I was like, yeah, Barb's dead. You don't find out too much later on that she's definitely dead, but I'm like, we haven't seen her run around. She's dead. I know, but it's like, some people might not mean anything, but it's like, if I hadn't watched Stranger Things, I think I would be a little offended by that. But me, not really, because I really don't care that much about spoilers. I mean, if something gets spoiled for me, I think of it like, hey, it's my fault. It's been out for a while. If I haven't watched it yet, that's kind of my fault, so... That's how I just look at it. Nevertheless, just all the constant jokes he's cracking about. First of all, it's like, oh yeah, this new dynamic. He's got Jane, Kurt, and Nas in the room. He's like, oh, this is kind of like with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when they kind of brought in the second Aunt Vivian. It's just like things got weird. It's like, oh, this whole dynamic's changed. And then when they're taking him down, actually just going to put him in a FBI holding room, and he's just like, okay, I'll tell you what the deal is. Jane, Kurt is obviously still in love with you. You just don't realize it yet. He's just confused. But all of this is because he's worried because a assassin known as the Acadian is after him, which the Acadian turns out to be a badass. There's a way he's like rolling across the top, sneaking around everywhere, not even making a sound, kicked the crap out of Tasha and Reed, kidnapped Tasha, pumped her with some poison or whatever, and then kicked Jane and Kurt's asses. But then Jane started kicking it was kind of in my, because a big part of this episode is kind of correlating with the dream that she had at the beginning of the episode, which is kind of a nice dream of just she's there, she's with Kurt, they're together, and then her brother Roman comes over, and it's just she gets everything she wants. She gets the man that she loves, and she gets her brother, and it's just oh, don't have to worry about all that. But then lo and behold, when she opens the door, who's there to answer it? Who's there on the other side? It's Remy. So basically it's her kind of fighting herself, and Remy's constantly being this isn't yours, basically kind of representing the fact is that Jane's life isn't hers, it's Remy's, that basically Jane doesn't exist. It's sad when you actually think about it, because you don't really think about it like that, but this episode kind of puts it like that. It's Jane isn't a real person. The real person is Remy, and Jane is kind of the fake, because Jane is just Remy without all her memories, and it's when you look at who they are, you kind of prefer Jane over Remy. No, you definitely do, because you realize that Remy's kind of a cold-blooded killer, and she was willing to do anything necessary. But it's Jane kind of knows wrong from right, and she's trying to do the right thing. She wants to help people. It's just And it's crazy to think about that. It's like without your memories, just how much of a completely different person you could be. You could be the nicest person, but the moment you lose your memories, maybe who's to say you won't become a complete another asshole? I mean, who's to say Jane didn't end up the way she did? It's because she was found by the FBI. Because the FBI helped mold her into a good person of like, what's wrong or right. But it doesn't seem like that. It seems like there is an innate side of her that was good. I mean, because what really made her into a quote unquote evil person was Shepard Trent, like bringing her up, her whole experiences of being put in that program, being taken from the orphanage, put in that program, raised by Shepard under this whole like sandstorm, group, it molded her into being Remy. But it's like without all that, without all those memories, she was just who she was probably always going to turn out to be. And that's what I guess when you actually think about it, it's like Jane is who Remy was supposed to be, but never got a chance to be. Like, if that little girl hadn't got caught up in all of this, hadn't been taken from the orphanage and all that, it's like, this is who she probably would have grown up to be. But, because that's something, that's kind of a big part of this season is obviously it's a big theme across the entire show, but they're really pushing it this season of like struggling with who she is. It's like before she thought she was Taylor Shaw and she held on to that. It's like, okay, this is who I am. Yes, I'm getting some memories back of like what happened throughout my life, but it's like Taylor Shaw is who I am. There's definitely it. And now it's like she doesn't have that to hold on to. So now she doesn't have a solid foundation to keep herself grounded. So she's balancing between like being Remy and being Jane. And it's just it's hard to keep it balanced. Because a big part of this episode is her saying like, I want to try and change Roman, kind of bringing up the whole thing. Like, we could have ended this thing with Sandstorm if you had just kept the data going. But she's like, I couldn't do that. I couldn't let Roman die, which Kurt is cutting her some slack because it's like, no matter what, that is still her brother. It's something, Reed kind of brought up earlier in the season, being like, the fact is that's her brother. Like, who's to say, that was a big thing. It's like, and I brought it up too. It's like, who's to say her loyalties won't change because he is her brother? And it's like, after everything they've been through, like, even in a short amount of time, she's realized, like, she got her memories back of the time they spent and get everything they've been through. So it's kind of hard to get rid of that. It's like, they're not blood siblings, but it doesn't change the fact that they grew up like siblings. He's important to her and she's important to him. So, she's willing to try and change him, but Nas is not okay with that idea. For her, because Kurt looks at it like this, like he understands where Nas is coming from, but he's like, you have to understand that if you don't do this, you're going to lose Jane as well. So she's like, oh, does you think Jane will actually side with Sandstorm? It's like, I think no matter what, she never would. Because Jane isn't Remy. They're very different people. They view things in a very different light. So I'm thinking that's kind of one kind of check mark in like Jane's corner of like, she would never go to the Sandstorm, even with the circumstances being as they were. But I still kind of feel like she easily could because I feel like she'd be swayed by Roman. I mean, because like the whole situation with Oscar last season kind of proved that she can be swayed, especially when the past is kind of used against her. Like, oh, this is who you were. This is what we had and stuff like that. So, you can already see that that's kind of interfering a little bit. She didn't put up too much of a fight when Nas said no, because Nas had brought it up before that there was someone in Sandstorm. There was a member of her team that was actually part of Sandstorm, and 3 of their colleagues ended up dying because she trusted that person. And she's like basically saying like her situation was kind of similar to Jane because she got close to someone that she didn't realize was Sandstorm. She let her guard down and 3 of their colleagues died, and she kind of doesn't want to have that repeated because it's kind of like in a situation of the life of one versus the life of many. It's like no matter what the case may be, I know Roman's your brother, but the fact is we have to look at the greater picture here because we have to take down Sandstorm. So, and you kind of see it a little bit later on in the episode because she kind of has a little bit of a date with Oliver because Patterson kind of hooks her up. I did like the whole like Jane kind of brings up the fact is like she's never been on a date before. Well, not that she can remember. And then Patterson brings up the fact that, oh, my first date. And she's like, I remember how much I cried. And you kind of see Jane's face like, wait, what? Why would you be crying? Okay, I don't understand this. But what we had was, her going on a date with Oliver. And then Oliver asked her, oh, like, here's these basic questions. Where are you from? Do you have any siblings? What's up with the tattoo? Stuff like that. He told her a little bit about himself. But then Jane kind of backed away. She was like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. This isn't mine. Kind of reflecting upon the dream and everything. How it basically the dream represented the fact is that her, like I brought up earlier, her life isn't her own. She's living Remy's life. It's like she's kind of like a shadow of her former self. It's like she can't even answer these basic questions because she doesn't know it, because this life she's leading isn't hers. It's Remy's. She's like, I'm not real. It's like Remy's the real me. She's the one that has all the memories. She's the one that actually has family. She's the one that could answer all these questions. But me, I'm just an empty slate that couldn't do that. And I'm very curious to see what that like how that will progress with the rest of the series. I mean, that mentality. I mean, because the fact of the matter is, I was kind of thinking the whole her and Oliver thing was going to be a little bit longer, but it seems like just as quickly as that's about to start, she quickly shuts it down. I was like, wow, because that came up was at the end of the last episode, and I was just so sure that was going to be something, but apparently not. So that's kind of interesting. Or the episode before last, whichever one it was. We kind of got a little bit more clues as to Nas's whole like listening in on Borden's conversations thing. Basically, there's a program known as Omaha. Essentially, it's kind of like the government's way of making up for the fact there's lapses in surveillance and security. It's like they weren't as tight, like information slipped through without them really knowing it. So basically, they buckled down, and Omaha is their way of improving the system. That basically surveillance is kicked up everywhere, and everyone is being watched like a lot more carefully. Like particularly, the keyword there is everywhere. So they heightened up like surveillance to a like very to the nth degree, you know. So that's what Omaha was all about, and that basically she's not very good at trusting people just after everything that, you know, it comes kind of a trait of the business. So like basically the main thing she was using that for was to keep tabs on Jane, trying to see where Jane's loyalties were. And then that in itself, you know, because, you know, Kurt brought up the fact is, you know, how many recordings of me do you have? It's like, I mean, for all we know, like, to my recollection, the only one we ever did really hear was the whole Jane situation. Now, I knew she wasn't the mole. I mean, granted, we still don't 100% know that, but I figured it was kind of like possibly leverage reasons why she kept it, but it really was just for the sake of like keeping Jane in line. But she does still have those recordings. I can't remember. I think she did listen to the one from Kurt, didn't she? Like I don't think she brought that up, but she did listen to the one from Kurt. She makes it seem like it's just Jane. It was like, I guess really she was just trying to fluff out the entire team. And that was kind of one possibility too. I was like, you know, trying to fluff out the team, see where their mental state is. I was like kind of balancing that with the fact is of like, oh, she could use it kind of, use it against them, kind of know their weaknesses and stuff like that. I don't know. That's just where my mind was at that time. But, there's that. Then, you take Reed's side of the story, him and Tasha. They actually had that DA and the detective coming in and they're like, oh yeah, we're sorry that we didn't, the DA is like, I'm sorry, I didn't really, you know, we looked at the tapes. I'm sorry, I didn't push forward with the whole Jones situation. Like, there wasn't enough concrete evidence against him, so that's why she didn't take it. It's like, you kind of get why she didn't take the case, but also you're kind of like, with all these allegations stacked against, it's something you still should have taken, like, even if it was the fact of like tearing Freddie apart on the stand. But nevertheless, it's just a whole thing. And then, you know, it's like, oh, they want Reed to kind of like say like, oh, who on the list might be the killer? And he's like, these are victims. It's like, yeah, but we're also looking at the suspects. He's like, that's messed up for you to, these guys have been through hell. You know what Jones did to them and everything. You finally know what Jones did to him because of all those tapes and everything. And you want me to sit here and kind of let you kind of go on a witch hunt and hunt these people down and kind of bury up some old memories for him. He's like, I'm not going to do that. You know, who the person that's blamed for Jones' murder? They're in this room and saying it's basically the DA because she let this slip through. He's like, I'm okay with what happened to Jones. He got what he deserved. I'm like, I can't believe you let that slip out your mouth, especially in front of the detective. But Tasha's up there trying to help him out, you know, balancing this whole thing with Rich.com and Acadia, which I'll get to them soon enough and everything. But Tasha is kind of like spinning on whether she really trusts Reed or not, because it seems like he is hiding something. He's not telling her the full story. But what it does come down to is at one point, Reed is kind of pushing her away and being like, okay, you're just doing this, okay? I'm telling you to let it go. I didn't want you to get involved, because she's like, okay, it is important. You know, we need to get the story straight. We need to work this out. We need to go after the knife and everything, because that's been brought into evidence because they found it and everything. And she's like, in her mind, she's thinking back to the knife that's missing from Reed's house that he said he threw away and everything. But the fact is, she's like, we got to look into it. And she's like, no, just leave it alone. And it's like, you're just gambling with my life. Like, you got your whole gambling problem. Like, you kind of let that go. But now you're just trying to find something else to kind of gamble on. And then that's just, you know, this is my life for gambling with. And it's just, you know, it kind of strikes a chord with Tasha. And she's like, okay. And Reed's trying to apologize. Doesn't get a chance to. What really kind of changes his mind is like Tasha almost dying and everything. it just kind of put things in perspective. He was like, I was only trying to push you away because I didn't want you to get any further involved. He said, let's leave the knife thing alone. She's like, okay. Even though she said, okay, I initially like, okay, you definitely weren't going to let it go. Because what, interestingly enough, Rita brought up the fact is that he had missing time. I don't remember him ever bringing it up. Maybe he did and I missed that. But that's like, I don't remember him bringing up the fact is that he had missing time. And it's like, Tasha didn't jump on that. So maybe he mentioned it before. I just don't remember. Just all I remember is him talking about the fact that he came in and like apparently because he had originally told her that he just came across the body, but it's like she ended up finding out that he was choking on his blood, and the fact is Reed was standing over him, so that means that Reed was there when he died. Like my understanding of it was that Reed just found him, he had already been stabbed and was dying and choking on his own blood, and Reed just stood there and watched him get choked on his own blood just because just because I'm not about to help you, I'm gonna let you suffer type of thing. But like I said, he brought up the fact is that he's missing memories. Maybe it's just, he says that he didn't watch the tape, but maybe he did, and his brain is subconsciously blocking that out, plus everything else that ended happening. I mean, nevertheless, Tasha ended up checking out, she ended up stealing the evidence and saw the knife, and it clicked in her brain. It's like, oh, this is the knife Freddie had, because she remembered him taking it the moment he left Reed's apartment, which I already knew it was Freddie. I mentioned that like 2 episodes ago, like that was going to be the case. But what that could mean, though, is because Reed is definitely hiding something and bringing up the whole lost time thing or whatever. So what could be the case is that he knew that Freddie did it. That's why he got so pissed about that whole conversation, is because he knew Freddie did it. He was there when Freddie did it. And like they just stood there like, Reed was panicking and Freddie was there. And he's just kind of like, he told Freddie to get out of there. So maybe he was covering for Freddie. Maybe it wasn't Freddie that got rid of the evidence. Maybe it was Reed, and Reed came back into the house after dumping the knife or whatever, and that's where Tasha caught him. But he was actually with Freddie and told Freddie to get out of there as soon as possible. So maybe that's what Reed is hiding, because he's definitely hiding something. And to me, I thought it was just the fact is that he stood over Jones' dead body and was like, I could have helped him, but I didn't. Maybe that part plays a part in it, but it's definitely connected to Freddie. And I'm curious to see like next episode when she brings it up, it's like, oh yeah, Freddie's it was Freddie's knife, and he's gonna be like, I told you not to bring that. I told you not to steal the knife, and then it's like, you knew, didn't you? And it's like, he did. I feel like that's where that's going to go. Plus, I feel like Tasha's going to get trouble because this whole thing is going to spiral out of control. Like, it's going to turn against them because they're going to start suspecting Reed. Or they're going to look at Tasha, the fact that she stole evidence and everything. I don't know. Really quickly before I kind of, I got one more thing to cover after this, but I really quickly want to go back to Rich. I love how the fact of the matter is when it was all said and done, he still was trying to play the FBI. Basically, the whole situation, Acadia coming after him was apparently he tried to hit on, who was it? Kim Jong-un? Or is it Il? The current head of, North Korea. Basically hit on his wife or something, like, oh, there was kind of a thing there. It's like, I thought they're supposed to have an open relationship, but apparently they don't. So that really was what this was all about. Because he said that to Kurt, but it made it seem like, but Kurt didn't take him seriously. Like, this was a waste of time. And apparently that really was the reason behind this. It's like, wow, that what seemed like just one of his stupid jokes actually turned out to be the truth. That's kind of the thing with Rich. It's like, you don't know whether what he's saying is 100% serious or whether he's faking and he's lying to you. I mean, he knows a lot more than he lets on. I'm surprised he didn't bring up the whole like Nas and Kurt thing, because he's very good at reading people, because he read Jane and Kurt very quickly, just that whole situation, being able to see what you can obviously see. And so when he was looking at them, and I thought he was going to bring it up, but he didn't. But maybe that is what he read, because he's very good at reading people, kind of breaking them down like that. But, the whole thing about his boyfriend from last episode, his significant other, the one he helped, that kind of helped him steal those arts. He made it seem like he died, was killed by Acadia, but it's like, no, he showed up and helps Rich get away. And then Rich and them think they got away, and it's like, boom. Nope. FBI was right on your asses. It's like, wait, what? How? And it's like, oh yeah, Patterson, she got your ass. It's like, oh, the lab lady? She's like, yeah, son of a bitch. Yeah, I got you. Because remember the last time because they kind of show a little bit in a flashback, he was a complete another douchebag, kind of like pushing, like kind of talking mad shit to Patterson, just being very disrespectful, just being a complete another asshole. The person in particular I'm talking about is Boston. But she ended up figuring it out, because apparently the whole, like, her being knocked out, she ended up getting checked out. She was okay, but that was all up front. It's like she got a different idea, because she figured there was a lot more to this than that. And it turns out it was, because this whole thing was a scam just for the FBI to get rid of Acadia for them, get like some free muscle to kind of get rid of some well-trained free muscle to get rid of him for them, and then kind of going his merry way, because it's like fool us once, shame on us, and it's like fool them twice, well, still shame on us, I guess, for being despicable people. But nevertheless, the point is Patterson figured it out because she was like, yeah, like the line he said about him dying in my arms, and like it's just the thing he said is like, yeah, that's exactly what Dobby said from Harry Potter. It's like, you made, and then Boston's like, you made me Dobby, and it's just because he was constantly referencing stuff all throughout the episode. So a little fourth wall breaking to a certain extent. I guess it's because kind of like the way TV works and everything. It's like, it's okay for you to mention other TV shows because it's like, oh, we're pretending that those TV shows exist in his universe. It's not like, it's being a little like meta about like, oh, the TV shows, mentioning TV shows within a TV show. Nevertheless, the point is Patterson kicked their asses and figured him out like that. So it's going to be, obviously he's locked up again, but we're going to see Rich again. Whether it's going to be popping up this season, maybe, because he popped up twice last season, so maybe pop up again this season. I'm just curious it's going to be what the circumstances is. And the final note I want to talk about, the fact is that Roman ends up getting a contact from their mole. I will note, it's kind of hard to debate this. Like, I'm like, hey, who wasn't in this episode? Well, Borden wasn't in this episode. So I'm like, I'm very suspicious. Borden also speaks multiple languages. I don't know. That's just me. Like, it's just, I know maybe they just have a thing for him to do in this episode. But nevertheless, I just get the feeling like Borden's has always been a little suspicious for me, especially when finding out there's another mole in the FBI. But it can't be him, because whoever it was had to know about Jane's whole situation with trying to convert Roman. It's like, because they end up sending Roman a message saying like, oh, Jane's loyalty is with the FBI. Now, only a few people knew about Jane's whole situation where she was trying to, the fact is, it literally could have been anybody, but it seems like why they would wait till this particular episode. Maybe it's because they are moving into stage 2 of their plan or whatever. So maybe that's one reason why they kind of get that message out now, because it's like the mole wasn't supposed to be activated until now. Obviously they know what they know, but they're supposed to keep it, and they're not really supposed to get into contact until the time is right, until they're called upon. So I don't know. I'm curious to see where that goes, because Roman was so adamant. Like, the guy's like, oh yeah, I'm sure, like, because he said something that the guy that was there kind of said something that pissed Roman off. He's like, shut up, my sister has proved our loyalty. It's like, you think she can't be trusted? No, I wasn't saying that. I'm sure, yes, your sister can be trusted. And like, he just kind of shook it off and kind of gave Roman kind of a death stare when Roman was walking away. But it was something Shepard doesn't know yet, and I'm sure he's not going to tell Shepard, because that's his sister. He loves her. He cares about her too much. He cares about Shepard. That's why he's following her lead and everything. But more so than anything, it's not out of love, I think, because remember, they don't call her mom. It's just kind of like, mom was a little weird, so we just refer to her Shepard, because that's kind of what she is. That's what Roman kind of brought up last time. So it's kind of like, more like, I think he follows her more out of like obedience and fear rather than love/loyalty. Like, I don't know if he 100% believes in what they're doing, or whether that's just something Shepard forced down his throat. And maybe the same thing kind of applies to Remy. Maybe that was what the case may be. But I feel like what we're going to see next episode is him trying to get Remy back. Because, like I said, the whole episode was kind of mainly revolving around the fact is that Jane's obviously dealing with the whole identity crisis thing. And, like, it's like, maybe, because it seemed like, when she was fighting Arcadia, the dream, like I brought that up, it's like, that's how she kicked his ass, is because she used the moves that Remy used in the dream to kind of kick his ass. So I'm thinking that's supposed to kind of represent the fact is that Remy, like, slowly with every new memory she's getting back, maybe a little bit of Remy is kind of seeping through, and maybe that was kind of her tapping into Remy inside of her. Rather than tapping into the Jane side of her, she's tapping into the Remy side of her that still exists there within her subconsciousness. So, because Roman did bring that up, that he would find that one thing that would get her to kind of revert back to her old self, finding, her quote-unquote rabbit and making it bleed, which, I truly believe that to be Kurt, especially because the whole dream thing. I think that's all supposed to be a metaphor and foreshadowing to the fact is that, hey, maybe even the fact is that it's supposed to be foreshadowing to the fact is that at one point soon she might be getting all her memories back and ends up reverting back to Remy. And maybe it'll be that whole situation of like she has to struggle with like having all her memories back as Remy, but also keeping her personality as Jane. And so she has to decide which one she wants to do. Like, which path does she want to follow? Does she listen to the Jane side of herself, or does she listen to Remy? Because I feel like that's where this is going to go. That seems like a late series type of thing, but I mean, because it seems like her memories are coming back sporadically, but with the whole Shepherd thing and Sandstorm, it seems like that might be the case of like, hey, we're actually going to expedite it and make it she actually gets her memories back maybe early this season, because last season they kind of split it up, kind of do like a seasonal break like every show does. It's kind of like a winter break, and it didn't come back until like February of last year. So they could totally do something like that, and like maybe after like around the end of the first half of the season, it's like she gets her memories back fully. So, but the fact is, because she wants to try and bring Roman over, because she realizes Roman's actually a good kid. It's just he was kind of forced to become the way he is by a combination of Remy and Shepherd, plus everything they've been through. So that's going to be kind of interesting, especially because we had the whole Nas and Kurt thing, which I don't want. I want Kurt and Jane, which I can't remember which one I came up with. Was it Jert? Kane? I think it was actually both, but I think I chose Kane. I thought that one kind of sounded nicer. But nevertheless, very good episode. I really don't know who the freaking mole could be, because it's like literally anyone. Like I said, maybe they were holding on to that information, because the thing is that information could have been held on at any point in time. Like it's if you're working the FBI, they're like, you picked up on the information, like, oh, obviously she's really working with the FBI. She's just pretending to be working with them. So it's not necessarily Borden. I just threw him out there just because he happened to not be here this episode. But that kind of pushes it. Like if it was just, if depending on which way you look at it, if it was based on the fact of her conversation this episode, it could be, a number of people. But it's like, I don't think it's any one of the main characters per se. Maybe it could be. Nas has kind of been removed from the runnings. I mean, not unless we end up finding out it's like, oh, she says the person she was working like that was Sandstorm, but really she's Sandstorm. She killed her colleagues and framed that other person, and now they're on the run. Could be the case too. So either way, like I said, very fantastic episode. Cannot wait to see where we go. Where these developments take us next week. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.